The ship that sailed beyond the edge of reality and found another world waiting. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath the pale light of dawn. Waves shimmered like molten glass, and the horizon was painted in shades of gold and violet. Upon that endless sea floated a single vessel, an old, steel-hulled exploration ship named Aurora's Wake. It was not large or majestic, but its purpose was unlike any other ship before it. It was built not only to sail across the oceans of Earth, but also to explore the boundaries of the unknown, where science ended and something else began. Captain Elara Voss stood at the deck, her eyes fixed on the rising sun. She had seen many horizons before, but this one felt different. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting. The air was calm, too calm for a morning at sea. Even the seagulls had stopped their cries, circling silently in the distance. Elara was not a woman easily shaken. She had spent half her life chasing myths, leading expeditions into places that existed only in legends, lost islands, uncharted trenches, and forgotten ruins buried beneath the sea. But this mission was unlike any other. Her crew called it Project Beyond. The goal was simple in words but impossible in meaning: to sail beyond the edge of known reality. Scientists believed that certain coordinates on the ocean, deep within the South Pacific, held strange readings, gravitational distortions, unexplainable light refractions, and magnetic fields that shifted like living things. Some said it was a crack in the world itself, a place where space and time folded upon themselves. Most dismissed it as superstition. But Elara did not. Standing beside her was Dr. Orion Hale, a physicist with wild, searching eyes. He carried a notebook everywhere, filled with equations and sketches that no one else understood. He believed that there was something beyond the limits of what humans could perceive, a gateway, perhaps, to another dimension. "Elara," he said softly, "the readings are stabilizing. We're entering the coordinates within the next 12 hours. After that, I don't know what we'll find." Elara gave him a small smile. "That's the point, isn't it?" she said. The crew of Aurora's Wake numbered 12. Each had their reason for being there. Some sought discovery. Others sought redemption. A few simply wanted to escape their past. There was Mira, the young communications officer who had once worked in deep space relay stations. She had a habit of talking to the stars as if they could hear her. Then there was Jonas Reed, the ship's engineer, whose rough hands had built and repaired everything from submarines to rockets. He was practical and skeptical, often clashing with Dr. Hale's theories. "You can't sail off the edge of reality," he would say with a laugh. "There's no edge. Just water and more water." But still, he had come. As the ship moved steadily into the open ocean, the crew felt something subtle, like the pull of a hidden current. Instruments began to flicker. Compass needles spun, then froze. The radar showed nothing but empty static. At night, strange lights danced upon the waves, thin, glowing ribbons that twisted like auroras trapped beneath the sea. Mira would stand at the radio deck, listening to faint whispers that came through the static. They weren't voices, not exactly, but they carried rhythm, as though the sea itself was trying to speak. By the third day, the sea began to change. The color of the water darkened, turning from blue to a deep shade of indigo, almost black. The stars above appeared brighter, closer. The horizon seemed to curve in a way that made no sense, as though the ship was sailing up an invisible slope. Captain Elara gathered her crew in the observation chamber that evening. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp swinging gently from the ceiling. "We're about to enter the zone," she said, spreading a map across the table. "No radio signals, no satellite coverage, and no return contact. Once we cross this line, we rely entirely on each other." Jonas grunted. "You make it sound like we're sailing into a ghost story." Dr. Hale adjusted his glasses. "Maybe we are," he murmured. Elara looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. "If anyone wants to turn back, this is the time. After this, we go forward until we find something or nothing at all." Silence followed. The waves tapped gently against the hull. No one spoke. Finally, Mira broke the silence. "I'll stay," she said simply. Someone has to talk to the stars if they start answering back. The others laughed quietly, and the tension eased. One by one, they all agreed to continue. That night, the Aurora's wake crossed the invisible boundary. The sea was unnaturally calm. Not a single wave rose against the ship's hull. The wind vanished, and even the sound of the engines seemed muffled, as if wrapped in thick air. The moon above shimmered strangely, its light bending at the edges. It looked like a reflection in broken glass. Dr. Hale stood on the bow, notebook in hand, sketching rapidly. "Do you see that?" he whispered. "The stars, they're moving." Elara followed his gaze. He was right. The constellations were shifting slowly, rearranging themselves like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. The North Star flickered, and then split into two. "Are we still on Earth?" Mira asked in a trembling voice. No one answered. At midnight, a deep hum filled the air, low and resonant, like the sound of a distant engine or an ancient voice awakening beneath the sea. The water around the ship began to glow faintly, and for a moment, they could see shapes moving beneath the surface, massive, graceful, and glowing faintly like spirits of the deep. Elara gripped the railing. "Steady," she said. "Whatever this is, we face it together." The lights grew brighter until the entire ocean seemed made of starlight. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow vanished. The hum faded. The Aurora's wake floated in silence. Only then did Mira whisper the words that none dared speak aloud. "We crossed it. We're not in our world anymore." The air felt different, lighter yet heavier, filled with an electric stillness. The sky was no longer dark, but painted with colors no human eye had seen before. And as dawn broke, the crew saw something rise from the horizon, something vast and impossible. A floating landmass, suspended above the water, its mountains glowing with light, its waterfalls cascading into the clouds. It was a world beyond the world, and the Aurora's wake had found it. The world that hung before them was unlike anything the human mind could fully grasp. The floating landmass shimmered as if it were made from fragments of dreams, mountains of crystal, rivers that flowed like molten light, and clouds that glowed faintly from within. It seemed alive, pulsing with color and rhythm, like the heartbeat of a living planet. The Aurora's wake drifted closer under its own power, though no wind filled its sails and no current pushed it forward. It was as if the ship itself was being guided, drawn by a silent invitation. Captain Elara Voss stood at the helm, her fingers gripping the railing tightly. "Maintain course," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her heart beat fast. Every instinct told her that this was something beyond human reason, something that could either be a discovery or a doom. Dr. Orion Hale, who had been pacing the deck for hours, suddenly froze. "Look at the instruments," he shouted. Everyone turned. The compass needle was spinning uncontrollably again. The radar was blank, yet the screen pulsed with waves of color, as though reacting to something unseen. The ship's sensors picked up impossible readings: oxygen-rich atmosphere above, gravitational inconsistencies, and faint electromagnetic pulses that sounded almost like coded patterns. Jonas, the engineer, frowned. "If this place even has gravity and air, that means it's something real, not just an illusion." "Or both," Orion said quietly. "A reality that bends with thought. A world shaped by what exists beyond logic." As the ship approached the edge of the floating landmass, the sea below changed. It was no longer water, but a shimmering surface that reflected not the sky above, but scenes from other places. Mira leaned over the railing and gasped. She could see her childhood home in the reflection, a small house beside the sea, her parents waving at her. She blinked and the image vanished. "It's showing us memories," she whispered. "Pieces of what we carry." Elara ordered the engines to slow. The Aurora's wake stopped just below the hovering continent. From this distance, they could see massive structures rising from the glowing cliffs, towers and bridges, carved from crystal and stone. It looked both ancient and futuristic, a civilization that could not belong to any known age. They lowered a small landing craft. Elara, Dr. Hale, Mira and Jonas stepped inside, hearts pounding as they began their ascent toward the floating world. The closer they rose, the more unreal it felt. The air shimmered like liquid glass. Time seemed to stretch and fold. Seconds felt like minutes, and minutes like moments. When the craft touched down upon a glowing plain, the crew stepped out in silence. The ground beneath their boots was soft, almost like sand, yet it pulsed faintly with warmth. Around them stretched vast fields of silver grass that swayed without wind. Far in the distance stood enormous trees with translucent leaves that glowed from within, casting faint music into the air. "This," Orion whispered, "this is beyond physics." They began to walk, their reflections rippling in the ground beneath their feet. The air smelled faintly of rain and starlight. Mira noticed faint figures moving between the trees, shapes that looked almost human but shimmered like light itself. Elara raised her hand. "Hold position," she said. One of the luminous figures moved closer, gliding rather than walking. It stopped a few meters away, its form flickering like a candle. It had no clear face, only an outline, a being made of light and color. Then it spoke, not with sound, but directly into their minds. "Travelers from the waking world," the voice said, echoing gently. "You have crossed the boundary. Few have done so, and fewer still have returned." The crew froze. Elara forced herself to speak, her voice steady. "We come in peace. We seek understanding." The being's light pulsed. "Understanding is a path, not a prize," it said. "And the path beyond the edge is not made for those who cling to one world." Dr. Hale stepped forward. "What is this place?" he asked. "Are we inside another universe?" There was a pause. Then the being replied, "You stand in the echo realm, a reflection of all realities, born from the dreams of existence itself. Here, thoughts become form. Memories shape matter. You call it impossible. We call it truth." Jonas shook his head. "You're saying this place is made of thought? That can't be real." "Reality," the being said softly, "is only the dream you agree upon." Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath them shifted. The silver fields rippled like water, and the world around them began to change. The crystal trees melted into waves of color, and new shapes emerged, familiar shapes. Mira gasped. They were standing in what looked like the deck of their ship, but it was twisted, bent, like a dream half-remembered. The being of light was gone. Dr. Hale scribbled frantic notes. "It's reacting to us," he said. "This world responds to consciousness. Our perceptions are shaping what we see." Elara turned slowly. "Then we must stay calm. We can't let fear decide what becomes real." As they moved through the shifting landscape, they saw glimpses of other things, faces, moments, fragments of their own lives. Jonas saw his late wife smiling beside the ocean. Mira saw herself as a child, staring at the stars. Elara saw her brother, lost years ago in a storm, standing at the edge of the glowing plain. "Captain," Mira whispered, "do you think these are real?" Alara's voice was low. "Maybe they're memories. Or maybe this world is showing us what it remembers of us." The sky began to tremble with light. From beyond the horizon, something vast stirred, a wave of brilliance moving through the air like a living storm. "We need to get back to the ship," Jonas said, panic in his voice. "Now." But when they turned back, the landing craft was gone. The plain behind them had folded in on itself, now an endless mirror of stars. They were trapped. The air shimmered, and from within the storm of light, the being appeared again, this time larger, more defined. "You sought the truth beyond reality," it said. "Now you must decide what you believe is real. For belief is the bridge that binds worlds." The ground cracked beneath them, and the glowing landscape began to dissolve. The crew clung to each other as gravity itself twisted. And in that blinding storm of color and sound, the Aurora's wake reappeared, floating not on water, but in midair, suspended in a sea of light. Elara's voice broke through the chaos. "Everyone, back to the ship. Now." They ran through the swirling light, their bodies half solid, half shadow, as if they were becoming part of the world itself. The moment they reached the deck, everything shifted. Light turned to water, and the storm vanished. The Aurora's wake floated once again, but the world around them was no longer the same. The sky was filled with twin suns, and vast floating islands drifted in the distance. The ocean glowed from beneath, and in the far-off horizon, something immense and shining moved, a structure that seemed to stretch beyond sight. Elara stood at the helm, her voice steady, but filled with awe. "We've gone beyond the edge," she said, "and the journey's only begun." The twin suns rose slowly over the horizon, casting long golden rays across a sea that shimmered like molten crystal. The crew of the Aurora's wake stood in silent awe, unable to speak. Every direction offered a new impossibility: floating islands the size of cities, glowing waterfalls that poured into clouds, and fish made of light gliding through the air as though swimming in the wind. Captain Elara Voss gripped the railing tightly. "This is no illusion," she said. "This world exists, at least as much as we do." Dr. Orion Hale adjusted his instruments, though half of them had stopped functioning hours ago. "It's a layered dimension," he said thoughtfully. "Matter and consciousness coexist here in ways our physics can't explain. Every thought, every emotion might alter what surrounds us." Mira looked around nervously. "So, if we're afraid," she asked, "does that mean the world will become dangerous?" Orion nodded slowly. "If fear takes form here, yes." Elara's eyes hardened. "Then we stay calm. We observe. No panic. This ship has faced worse." But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Nothing could compare to this. The Aurora's wake began to move, gliding smoothly through the glowing sea. The air shimmered around the vessel, and faint shapes formed and faded just beyond sight. Structures made of light, bridges connecting floating islands, and distant silhouettes walking in the air. Jonas, the ship's engineer, muttered under his breath as he checked the engines. "Half the systems don't even make sense anymore. The power lines are pulsing like veins, Captain. It's as if the ship itself is alive." "Keep her steady," Elara said. "We can't risk losing control." Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time had started to lose meaning in this place. The suns moved too slowly, and their light never dimmed. The crew's bodies felt light, almost weightless, as though they were caught between waking and dreaming. Then, out of the endless glow, something began to appear, a massive structure rising from the horizon. It was a tower, impossibly tall, piercing through the clouds and beyond. It gleamed like a pillar of glass and starlight. "There," Orion said, pointing. "If this place has answers, they'll be there." The crew agreed. They set a course toward the shining tower. But as they drew closer, the world around them began to change again. The ocean's glow dimmed, the air thickened, and whispers filled the air, faint, echoing voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mira covered her ears. "Do you hear that? It's like they're calling us." Elara frowned. "Ignore it. Keep focus." But the voices grew stronger. They weren't threatening, just sorrowful, like memories carried by the wind. When they were less than a mile from the base of the tower, the ocean rippled violently. A shadow passed beneath the ship, massive, ancient, alive. Jonas shouted, "Something's moving under us." The surface erupted in a burst of light. A giant form rose from the glowing depths, a creature unlike anything known. It was translucent, its body made of shifting glass-like scales. Its eyes were deep pools of starlight. It looked at the Aurora's wake with both curiosity and sadness. The ship rocked under the creature's gaze. What is that?" Mira whispered. Dr. Hale stared in wonder. "A manifestation of this world's will, maybe. A guardian." The creature's voice echoed directly in their minds. "Travelers from the old reality," it said, each word vibrating through their bones. "Why have you come here, where the fabric of truth is undone?" Elara stepped forward, unafraid. "We came seeking understanding, to know what lies beyond the edge." The creature's great eyes glimmered. "Many have sought the edge," it said, but few accept what they find. For beyond your world lies not knowledge, but reflection. This place shows you what you are, what you believe, what you fear. And it will not let you go until you understand yourselves. Before they could respond, the creature sank back beneath the luminous waves, leaving the sea calm once more. Jonas exhaled shakily. So now the giant fish wants us to face our feelings? But Orion's eyes were serious. It's not a creature. It's a consciousness, part of the world itself. I think it was warning us. The Aurora's wake reached the base of the tower soon after. The structure loomed impossibly tall, stretching into the twin suns. A bridge of light extended from it to the ship, forming a smooth path. Elara turned to her crew. We go together. Stay alert. They crossed the bridge, each step echoing softly. The air shimmered like heat waves, and the moment they stepped onto the platform at the base, the tower opened with a sound like a sigh. Inside was a vast hall, filled with swirling light and floating symbols that moved like living constellations. The walls seemed to breathe. The floor beneath them mirrored their reflections, but each reflection was slightly different. Mira gasped. That's not me, not exactly. Her reflection smiled, though she hadn't. Jonas stepped closer to his own reflection. It showed him standing in a room filled with machines, his wife beside him. But she was alive, something impossible. He reached toward the glassy surface. Jonas, don't. Elara shouted. But it was too late. The surface rippled, and his reflection's hand reached back. In an instant, Jonas was pulled through, disappearing into the mirrored light. Jonas! Mira screamed. Elara ran forward, slamming her hand against the glass, but it was solid again. No trace of him remained. Dr. Hale stared at the shifting reflections. It's testing us, he whispered. Each of us. This place draws from our thoughts, our memories. It's showing us what we most desire, to trap us. Mira stepped back, trembling. Then how do we fight something made from our minds? Elara's voice was steady but grim. We hold on to what's real. Each other. The light around them dimmed, and the air began to hum. The reflections shifted again, now showing darker images. The tower was no longer bright, but filled with shadow. They could hear faint footsteps echoing around them, though none of them moved. A voice spoke, not from the world outside, but from within their own minds. You cannot find truth without losing yourself first. The hall began to collapse inward. Elara grabbed Myra's arm and pulled her toward the exit. Orion stumbled behind them, clutching his notebook. They barely made it across the light bridge before the tower sealed itself, vanishing into thin air. The Aurora's wake drifted once more on the glowing sea. Jonas was gone. The crew stood in shaken silence. Mira wept softly. He's still alive somewhere in there. Orion placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe. But that tower, it feeds on what we carry inside. It's not a place we can fight. Elara turned toward the horizon. Far in the distance, across the endless shining waves, another structure rose, this one darker, pulsating like a heartbeat. That's where we're heading next, she said firmly. If this world tests our truth, then maybe the way home lies at its center. The others nodded silently. As the Aurora's wake sailed onward into the glowing mist, the twin suns began to set for the first time since they had arrived. The sky darkened into hues of violet and silver, and countless new stars appeared, stars that seemed to move and breathe. Mira looked at them with a mix of awe and fear. Do you think this place dreams of us the way we dream of it? Elara didn't answer. She simply watched the horizon, where the dark tower pulsed like a waiting heart. And somewhere beneath that shining sea, Jonas Reed opened his eyes, standing in another version of the ship, surrounded by light that whispered his name. Jonas Reed woke to silence. The air around him shimmered faintly, filled with a light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He was still aboard the Aurora's wake, but not the one he knew. The deck beneath his boots felt soft, like living glass, and the ocean around him glowed with soft, pulsing light. He looked up and froze. His wife stood at the bow of the ship. "Clara," he whispered. His voice trembled. She turned slowly, smiling just as he remembered. The same dark hair tied in a braid, the same kind eyes that he had thought he'd never see again. She stepped toward him, her bare feet leaving ripples of light across the deck. "You found me," she said softly. Jonas couldn't breathe. You're gone. You died." She shook her head gently.
"No, Jonas."
"I've been waiting. You crossed the veil, just as you always promised. You said you'd find me beyond the edge of everything." Tears welled in his eyes. He reached out to touch her hand. It was warm, solid, real. "Is this real?" he asked. Clara smiled faintly. "It's as real as your heart allows it to be." For a moment, he didn't care. He held her close, burying his face in her shoulder, feeling her heartbeat against his. The pain, the years of loneliness, gone, washed away by the simple truth of her presence. But then, faintly, he heard another sound, the voice of Captain Elara, echoing distantly, as if carried by wind from another world. "Jonas, wake up, don't believe it." He looked around. The sea began to flicker, its glow turning uneven. The Aurora's wake shimmered and split into reflections of itself. Clara's eyes dimmed for a moment, her smile faltering. "What's happening?" Jonas asked, panic rising. Clara touched his face. "You're being called back," she whispered sadly. "But if you go, I'll fade. Stay with me, Jonas. Stay where love doesn't die." Jonas stepped back, shaking his head. "You're not her. Not really. You're something this place made." Her expression changed. For the first time, her eyes filled with sorrow, and something else. "If love made me," she said softly, "does that make me any less real?" Before he could answer, the world shattered like glass, and Jonas fell into darkness. Far away, in the true Aurora's wake, Elara, Mira, and Dr. Hale sailed toward the heart of the strange world. The dark tower grew larger by the hour, rising from the glowing sea like a mountain made of shadows and light. No stars shone above it. The air around it vibrated, and lightning arced silently across its surface. Dr. Hale stood by the railing, staring at it with a mix of wonder and dread. That tower, it's the center of everything. The source of the distortions. If we reach it, we might find the core that connects this realm to ours. Or, Mira said softly, we might never come back. Elara's jaw tightened. Either way, we finish what we started. The ship entered the shadow of the tower. The sea below them turned dark and still, as if frozen in time. The closer they got, the heavier the air became. It pressed against them, thick with unseen weight. Suddenly, the radio crackled. Mira ran to it, adjusting the dials. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal. Weak, but it's him. It's Jonas." A faint voice broke through the static. "Elara, I can see you, don't stop." Elara's heart lifted.
"He's alive."
Orion frowned. But how? He was absorbed by the mirror realm. He shouldn't be. The voice came again, stronger this time. "The tower connects all reflections. It's where the worlds overlap. You can bring me back, but you'll have to go through it." The transmission ended abruptly. Elara met Orion's gaze. "We're going in." They lowered anchor near the tower's base and stepped onto its surface. Unlike the shining tower before, this one felt alive. Its walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and the air inside glowed with a deep crimson hue. As they ventured deeper, they began to see fragments of other realities layered over one another, hallways that looped back into themselves, stairways that led both up and down at once, rooms filled with floating shapes that looked like pieces of other worlds. Mira touched one of the shapes and gasped. She saw her own reflection staring back, but older, wiser, and crying. "She's me," Mira whispered. "From another world." Elara pulled her away. "Don't look too long. This place feeds on identity." At the heart of the tower, they found a vast circular chamber. In the center hovered a sphere of light, half gold, half black, pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats. Around it floated countless fragments of glass, each showing different versions of themselves, different choices, different lives. Orion stared at it in awe. This is the core of reflection. The world's memory. Every possibility, every path, it all exists here. Elara stepped closer. Then this is where we find Jonas. The sphere flickered. A figure began to form within it. Jonas, reaching out, his expression desperate. Elara, don't touch it. It's alive, it's thinking. The chamber trembled violently. The sphere's light expanded, filling the room. From its glow emerged countless shapes, copies of themselves, distorted and hollow-eyed. They began to step forward, whispering in unison. You are not real. You are only echoes. Mira screamed as one of the reflections grabbed her arm. Its hand passed through her, leaving behind a shimmer of light. Elara drew a flare gun and fired. The light scattered the shadows for a moment, but they reformed. Dr. Hale shouted over the roar of the energy storm. The core reacts to thought. Whatever we believe becomes true. Focus on who you are. Elara closed her eyes. She thought of the ocean, of her crew, of every storm she had survived. I am Captain Elara Voss. I am real. The reflections around her wavered, then began to dissolve. Mira followed her lead, holding on to her memories, her voice trembling as she whispered, I am Mira, and I am not afraid. The chamber calmed. The sphere's light dimmed, revealing Jonas lying at its base, weak but alive. Elara ran to him, helping him up. We've got you.
He looked around, dazed.
Clara, she was here. Or something that wore her face. I know, Elara said softly. This place uses what we love to keep us trapped. Orion approached the sphere, his eyes wide. Captain, there's something else. The core, it's linked to our world. If we destroy it, we might close the passage between realities. But we'll be trapped here forever. Mira looked up sharply. And if we don't, then it will expand, Orion said. It will pull more of our reality into this one, until both collapse. Silence fell. The crew exchanged glances, each one knowing what the choice meant. Elara stepped forward, her voice steady. Then we end it. This world was never meant to exist alongside ours. Jonas nodded. Do it. Orion placed his hand against the sphere. Once I start the sequence, there's no going back. Then start it, Elara said. He began to work, his fingers tracing patterns of light across the core's surface. The tower shook violently. Outside, the glowing sea erupted into waves of color. The twin suns flared, turning white-hot. The world itself was unraveling. Captain, Mira shouted over the roar. If this world ends, where do we go? Elara held her gaze. We find our way home, or we make one. The core burst in a blinding flash. The tower began to collapse, folding in on itself like a dying star. The crew ran back toward the ship, the floor vanishing beneath them in flashes of light. They leaped aboard the Aurora's wake just as the world around them exploded in brilliance. The last thing Elara saw before everything turned white was the sea turning to glass, and their reflections smiling back at them. The light swallowed everything. It wasn't the kind of light that burned or blinded, it was the kind that erased. For a moment, Captain Elara Voss felt weightless, floating between one heartbeat and the next. There was no ship, no sea, no sound. Only silence and brilliance, endless and eternal. Then, slowly, she began to hear it, the faint rhythm of the ocean, the whisper of wind, the groan of steel. She opened her eyes. The Aurora's wake drifted through a sea of pure white light. The world around her had no horizon, no sky, no stars. Just infinite brightness, stretching in every direction. Elara, Myra's voice was soft, distant, as though carried by an echo. Where are we? The captain steadied herself, gripping the railing. Between worlds, she said quietly. The core's destruction broke the boundaries. We're caught in the in-between. Dr. Orion Hale lay near the deck's console, half conscious but alive. His hands trembled as he tried to read the instruments. Reality's folding, he said weakly. Our ship's quantum structure is still intact, but space itself is trying to rewrite us. Jonas stood beside the mast, staring at the light. Rewrite us into what? No one answered. The sea rippled, and the light began to shift. Slowly, the white faded to silver, then to blue. Shapes formed in the mist, mountains, skies, stars. The world was trying to rebuild itself. But what world would it choose? Elara realized what was happening. It's creating a new reality, she said. The core's collapse merged the two worlds, our own and the reflection. It's waiting for us to decide which one becomes real. Mira looked at her in shock. You mean we have to choose reality itself? Orion nodded. Our thoughts, our memories, our belief, that's the anchor. Whatever we hold on to now will define what remains. The air began to shimmer again. Around them, fragments of both worlds appeared, pieces of Earth's oceans and cities, and pieces of the glowing realm they had discovered. Floating islands drifted beside waves of ordinary water. Birds with wings of glass flew above steel clouds. The border between dream and truth was gone. Jonas clenched his fists. If we choose wrong, what happens? Then nothing will exist, Orion said simply. The two realities will tear each other apart. A heavy silence fell. The crew stood together at the deck center, surrounded by both the beauty and terror of creation. Myra's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to forget this world, she said. It's too beautiful. Elara placed a hand on her shoulder. Beauty means nothing if we can't return to it. We were never meant to stay here. We belong where life and death still mean something. Jonas shook his head. Maybe this place is life. Maybe this is what comes after. What if going back means losing everything we've learned? Elara looked at him steadily. Then we take the memory with us. Orion raised his voice. If we're going to choose, we must do it now. The fields are collapsing. The ship rocked violently as the sea beneath them began to split. On one side stretched the familiar blue of Earth's ocean. On the other, the glowing waters of the reflection realm shimmered like living glass. The two waves pulsed in rhythm, pulling at the ship like twin tides. The crew held on as the Aurora's wake began to drift apart between the two worlds. Elara! Mira shouted. Which side do we take? Elara stared into the divide. Her heart pounded. On one side lay the home they had come from, ordinary, flawed, but real. On the other, a world of light and perfection, untouched by pain. A soft voice whispered in her mind, the same voice that had spoken when they first arrived. To go back, you must let go. To stay, you must forget. She closed her eyes. To forget? That would mean erasing everything. Earth, her crew, her past. They would live in peace, but as strangers to who they once were. She opened her eyes. We go home, she said firmly. We live with the world we understand. Jonas hesitated. Even if it means losing what we saw? Elara nodded. The unknown gave us this gift, but it's not ours to keep. Orion moved to the control console. Then hold on to something real. A memory, a name, a moment that defines you. That's what will anchor us. The ship began to tremble violently. The sea cracked like glass. Lights surged around them. Each of them closed their eyes. Mira whispered, "The stars over Earth." Jonas murmured, "The sound of rain on the workshop roof." Orion said softly, "The equation that led me here." And Elara whispered, "The sea, always the sea." The light flared, blinding. The ship was torn through the boundary, carried by a current of pure energy. They felt themselves falling, then rising, then falling again, through time, through memory, through every dream ever dreamt. And then there was darkness. When Elara opened her eyes, she was lying on the deck of the Aurora's wake. The sky was pale blue, the ocean calm and endless. The stars above were the ones she knew. The world was still. Mira stirred beside her. "Captain, we're back?" Elara looked around. The instruments were working again. The compass pointed north. The radio was alive with static and faint voices from the mainland. Jonas sat up, blinking in disbelief. We made it. Orion exhaled slowly, staring at the sea. Maybe. But something feels different. He pointed at the horizon. For just an instant, as the sun rose, they saw a faint shimmer in the air, a reflection of the glowing realm, fading like a dream at dawn. And then it was gone. Mira smiled faintly. Do you think it was real? Elara looked out at the horizon, her expression unreadable. Reality isn't something we find, she said. It's something we choose to believe in. They sailed quietly for a long time after that. The ocean was calm, yet sometimes, when the light hit the waves just right, they thought they saw things, shapes moving beneath the water, faint songs drifting on the wind. Perhaps the other world wasn't gone completely. Perhaps some part of it remained, watching, waiting. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, Elara stood alone on the deck. She held her hand against the railing, feeling the hum of the ship beneath her fingers. The sea stretched endlessly ahead, familiar and strange all at once. Beyond the edge, she whispered, there's always another horizon. And the Aurora's wake sailed onward, back into the world it came from, carrying within it the memory of another one. Somewhere, across the silent universe, the echo of that voyage lingered, like a ripple through time, reminding the cosmos that once a ship had sailed beyond the edge of reality and found another world waiting.